still don't understand. What's going on, my friend?
Yeah, so we've got three-game slate to talk about, and was somebody saying that you're muted here, or am I muted? Was that somebody
No, it's
saying?
me. I'm guessing, but I don't, this is this is good.
Well,
Let's give
I
the
got
old
we've
both you
got.
guys.
audience
By
a
the way, you might be happy to know, Boss Ket is saying that EMAC is so cute. So there you go. You got that going for you. I could hear you just fine. I don't know if
okay.
that
Chat is caught up. It looks good. If you guys want to see a really something fun, you got to check out Playback. It's the newest thing we have going on here at Stochastic. We're doing a simulcast here. I'm going to drop the link to Playback into the chat here, but you get to see, much like they have the Nickelodeon version of some of these sporting events, you're going to get that version of me over there on Playback. You're going to have to check that out. But that's something we are doing Monday through Friday after lock. Greg's sliding on into something comfortable, so he'll be in that same robe he's wearing right now, and he's going to be welcoming in a variety of Stochastic contributors, breaking down late slates, talking about live sports wagering, etc. But definitely check that out. But tonight we've got a three-gamer here. We got a little bit of clarity on the injury information, Greg. So we sort of
sort of.
we now know Rudy Gobert is officially questionable. Before we weren't sure because that injury report, I don't think it came out till 2:30 or 3:30, but he is dealing with a sore ankle. We knew something was probably amiss with him, but there was, when we were doing the strategy show, we didn't have distinct information. And then we saw that Miles McBride was then listed as questionable with an illness. He has since been ruled back in. And then we have the Orlando Magic starting lineup. I guess I want to say mostly as expected. Gary Harris going to start again here. So we end up there with Jalen Suggs, Harris, Wagner, Boncaro, and then Wendell Carter Jr. They're running mostly healthy, with the exception of Markelle Fultz. And they have the best matchup. So we have two players might get 30 minutes for the Magic tonight. So it's going to be a lot of overlap on tonight's slate. But this is where the Stochastic Sims can help you out. The lineup generator can help you out as well, because it's going to be looking at leverage and how to handle different things going on with the field in what is basically going to be a chalky night compared to our last two. But that just means opportunity for those who are savvy. And fortune favors the bold, Greg. That's always good.
And the other thing too here is, by the way, EMAC, not to give you more things here, but make sure that you have the correct camera, the correct microphone selected if possible over in Playback. People were saying that you sound really far away, so you might not have the right microphone selected there.
I was not given instructions on selecting a microphone in Playback earlier today.
It's all right. It's hey, listen, we're all trying to figure it out as we go. The new platform, there was numerous technical hurdles that I was trying to get over the other day myself when we were doing it. But yeah, no worries. It won't be an issue. We did get some super chats already. Shout out to Chris Williams, who gifted out, technically 15 YouTube memberships. He gave out 3 different sets of 5 YouTube memberships. So I don't know. Do I say 3 sets of 5? Do we say 15 here? Do I thank Chris 3 times? All of that definitely makes sense to me. But Chris, thank you as always for supporting the channel. And also, guys, if you haven't done it, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel over here on YouTube. EMAC, try talking. Let's see if the people in Playback.
All right. Does that sound a little better, a little different? Hopefully. I changed mics, so
okay.
and input, so it should be something different. I'll make a concerted effort to talk a little bit louder, but all we got to do is get me a little bit excited, Greg, and then I'm going to be off the charts once again, and we'll let this coffee kick in, and that shouldn't be a problem here as we move on. Again, did not get the nap today. Very disappointed in myself. Packing to move, and just wasn't in the cards. Very, very sad. I'm going to be heading down to Florida. For those of you that aren't aware, I'll be down there full time, essentially in April, which makes me a little sad that they've tweaked some of their pick'em site rules there. A few sites are going to be sliding into the netherworld down there in Florida. But in the meantime, we are sponsored tonight by Sleeper, and you can get up to a $500 deposit match with your first deposit over there. You can win up to 100 times buy-in with their payouts. That's the highest payouts on the market. They have in-game contests as well, meaning they'll have fourth quarter, second half, first half props that are up, and then the dynamic payouts. You can go in and a lot of their offerings, you can choose a higher number or a lower number, and it will change the payout. So if you're looking at somebody with a 22.5 PRA, you could move them up to a 26 in some cases and get a better payout for that. So they're currently on mobile devices. You'll want to check that out. But again, $500 deposit match does not happen all that often. So check that out. Yes, I do not have my camera on playback. That is the surprise.
And the other one too is yeah, so apparently, Emac, you now have no sound on playback. So whatever you had selected before, just select the other one. Select the other one. One other thing to add about playback, they have a free square tonight, over under 0.5 points for Jason Tatum. So pretty good deal for you guys over at playback. If you're signing up for the first time, use our link, not only to get the deposit bonus offer, but also you're going to be getting access to Jason Tatum over 0.5 points. That's a free square. That's going to be hitting for sure over on Sleeper. There was one, Lafayette actually brought it up last night, where we talked about these Sleeper free squares. There was one last year that almost didn't. So all of them have hit 100% hit rate. There was one, though, that came very close over on Sleeper to not hitting last year. It was in the playoffs. Caleb Martin had, when he was on that crazy heater where he was making everything, he had a game rate over under 0.5 points over on Sleeper. And you know what ended up happening? He had 0 points until the third quarter of that game. He ended up hitting a shot. He finished with 2 points to just get the over. But yeah, feel pretty good about over 0.5 points for Jason Tatum on Sleeper. So go take advantage of that if you guys are signing up there. And there we go, Emac. I bought you some time. So hopefully.
All right. So I'll talk louder here. Hopefully they can now hear me on playback. They'll give us some notes here. Good God, this is technology. Jordan's first thing he said to me when he was helping this morning, he's like, "Oh, this is going to be so easy." I'm like, Jordan, you don't know who you're talking to here. I'm the biggest change.
Emac, you have yourself muted. That's the issue. You muted yourself.
Where?
Where it said on the microphone. Where let me see if I could unmute you. Let me see.
I got it. There we go. How about that? That should help.
All right.
I'm hoping.
All right. Yeah, it seems like you just had yourself muted. That was the issue.
There we are. Good God. Yeah, Melissa, Emac, you're bringing great shame to our generation. I am carrying that banner proudly. You can't be a boomer unless you're a boomer. So there we go. Hopefully that works. We shall see. We shall see. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your patience. We do appreciate that. Thankfully, we just have the 3 games here. So, and we'll do some screen shares, et cetera. But apologies for all this. It was working all good this morning.
That's how
until we got
goes.
on the big screen, the main stage.
So, by the way, the same thing happened to me on Thursday, Emac. And the other thing, too, is, we're talking about big, very excited about the playback. Good opportunity. I think it's a platform that has really high upside. So same thing, Thursday. So we're doing like our launch first show. I'm about to start and my audio goes, I can't hear anything. And it was said to start the show. I had to figure out on the fly how to make the audio work. Cause yeah, to start the show, I couldn't hear Jordan, couldn't hear Eric. So was trying to hide it and do that at the top of the show without being able to hear anything. It was quite tricky, but yeah, I could relate to some of the new technology issues, but it happens. It happens.
All righty. Well, shall we at least talk about the slate here? We can have some folks come catch us on the old YouTubers. And it's sorry, we'll get this sorted out, but always good throwing me live with new technology here. Okay, Greg. So
fuck it, we're going live.
Yeah, we're doing it live. We'll take care of all this. We'll fix all this in post-production here. It'll be good. It'll be good. I see Cobra says, tell us about what it was like before YouTuber was invented. It's funny, if you go on YouTube now, you can see videos that are like 14 and 15 and 17 years old. I hadn't realized it'd been around that long. But in any event, Greg, so we kind of hit the high notes here. Do you want to just quickly go by game and just talk about a few scenarios? Would that be the preferred methodology here?
I think we got a bunch of questions. We could start answering some of those.
Let's go ahead and fire those up. I do have YouTube chat up, so it's the only thing working for me. I see we've got a super chat there. Let me go look at that and
Yeah,
see
we've
what
got
else
some questions in Discord. We've got some super
All
chats
right.
here. So,
Holy cow, we got some super chats.
yeah.
So
So that was why I was
DB
shouting
average.
out Chris Williams before.
Yep, DB average pilot says hit that like button for good luck. And he's looking for a cheap sub 4K player. We'll get to that one. Ace of Spades asking the huge. He wants to know about tiers. And then Thomas Ryan is looking for favorite DK plays at each position. I think we can kind of encompass those here. I'm going to assume we can give our under 4K for both sides, but I'm going to assume he's talking DK. Just real quick for it's going to be probably Jonathan Isaac. Is he now? I've closed out too many windows. Is he 4K under 4K? If not,
Yes.
Gary Harris was someone else. Those are going to be the two uber cheapies here. So Isaac is 37. He is semi interesting, and then Gary Harris is 39. Looking between the two of those, personally, I would go with Gary Harris. One, he's starting. This is the front end of a back-to-back. Harris does, I think he's in his age 29 season here, often injured, etc. But with Fultz out, he is going to be sort of the co-facilitator along with Boncaro and Wagner with that starting lineup. But I like him to at least have a decent chance at about 24 minutes. Isaac makes me a little nervous. He does play on the back-to-backs. If he was starting, he'd be good because you'd think he would probably get 18 to 20 minutes. He plays all over the place between 14 and 22 minutes per game. He has played I believe, 2 of the last 3 back-to-backs, but his minutes have been under 20 in most of them. So Isaac makes me a little bit nervous. I did recommend taking the under on his 13.5 PRA today. We like him for DFS because he's cheap. He gets blocks and steals. But I think you can hedge out over there on the sports wagering world and look for the under 13.5. I'd take it even under 12.5 if it moved down. But for me, Gary Harris would be the cheapie. What do you like here on DK?
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to be going with Jonathan and Isaac here. So there's a pretty big gap in our projections between Isaac and Gary Harris. We do have Isaac projected for 3 more fantasy points. So with that being the case, and also that Isaac is cheaper than, so there's 3 things going in Jonathan Isaac's favor. 1, he is cheaper than Gary Harris. That's a positive. 2, we have him project for 3 more fantasy points. That's a fairly significant gap as far as DFS is concerned. And then the third part of it is that there's also better positionality for Jonathan Isaac. He's power forward and center eligible. Gary Harris only shooting guard eligible. So Jonathan Isaac, for me, he is going to be my favorite guy to get to on DraftKings for sub 4K. Now I'll go pull up FanDuel. Let's see. FanDuel pricing for the guys. Sub 4K on FanDuel. So for FanDuel, I'm going to be going with Anthony Black here. The problem with FanDuel in some of the cheap guys is that Gary Harris is $4,200 on FanDuel. Jonathan Isaac is $4,400 on FanDuel. There just aren't that many viable options sub 4K on FanDuel. So it's kind of Anthony Black by default. Lots of guys to get to sub 4K on DK, less so over on FanDuel.
Yep, totally agree. And then anybody below kind of that Anthony Black level is you're looking at 11 or fewer fantasy points. Kind of a stretch to go there. Let's hit the Ace of Spades question here. He is looking for DK tiers. I do have that up here, Greg, so I can kind of help take the lead if you want to counterbalance any of these. Tier 1, it's going to be a lot of close options. This is really going to be your differentiator. Jason Tatum is coming out 3 projected fantasy points higher than anybody else. You've got Brunson, Anthony Edwards, and Paulo Banchero all within 3 points of him. I think you'd lean towards Tatum in this one. If you talk about, or if you think about the New York Knickerbockers defense, hey, it was pretty good when they had OG Anunoby. They had gotten down to a 104 defensive efficiency. They're up to 116 in the 10 games without him. So they're kind of playing league average. The only knock against Tatum is that everybody's healthy for Boston, but otherwise he seems like the best play. You had a strong lean towards Karl Anthony Towns today. He is coming out up tops on tier 2. Everybody, or the top 3 options are Towns, Gobert, Cunningham. They're all within 1.5 points of each other. But I agree with Karl Anthony Towns, even if Rudy Gobert plays. Do you have a different read on that?
So let me start with tier 1 first, just so kind of going like, I agree with you. Tier 1 is clearly Jason Tatum. Just want to make sure I get my opinion out there.
Absolutely.
Tier 2, it is Karl Anthony Towns for me as well. And I think you laid it out pretty nicely because as is now, he already has the best projection of anybody in this tier. But it's not like some sort of massive, massive gap between the other players. However, if Rudy Gobert is to be ruled out, he is currently listed as questionable officially. That's going to be the big news of the slate that we're waiting on for the next 40 minutes. He would really elevate himself above the other guys, not to mention that Rudy Gobert is one of the options in tier 2. So it is Karl Anthony Towns as of now, and then even a stronger confidence selection of Karl Anthony Towns should there be no Rudy Gobert tonight.
All righty, that takes us to tier 3. I think that's clearly Franz Wagner. He is coming out higher than everybody else by 3 points. So that one's pretty straightforward. If we look at tier 4, you got a bit of a lean there for Jalen Duren. We want to remember that Isaiah Stewart is serving a suspension. I believe he's going to miss 3 games. I think he's already missed one of them, but he's out. So that means we potentially have James Wiseman playing some front court minutes, or just F it, we're not going to play a center in these situations, which technically they don't really have to, because Orlando's going to be countering with why am I blanking on this? Wendell Carter Jr. And he is kind of a power forward / center himself. So I think Duren will be just fine. Projecting him, or I'm guessing he's in for about 32 minutes would be the lean there, but he's easily the number 1 option. Do you have anybody else in tier 4?
So tier 3, totally agree. It's going to be Franz Wagner. Tier 4, that's going to be Jalen Duren for me. I think that's the guy to go to.
All right. 5 gets a little muddy here. Do you have we're going to play a guard. Is it Drew Holiday, Jaden Ivey, or Mike Conley?
I mean, you could also make a case for a Zurt Thompson here. There's a number of guys that you could go to in tier 5. And this is one where if you guys are playing multiple lineups in tiers, I say this is the one to really differentiate this tier, because there's very little that differentiates Drew Holiday, Jaden Ivey, Azur Thompson, Mike Conley in our projections, especially when you consider that Mike Conley will be getting a little bit of a boost should Rudy Gobert end up getting ruled out. I'm going to go with Drew Holiday here, but it's really tight. You can make a case for a number of guys in tier 5.
All right. And then tier 6, where are you leaning here? It looks like Wendell Carter Jr., but potentially a Naz Reid sighting could happen if you want to roll the dice and Rudy Gobert be out.
And Rudy Gobert is out. So with that in mind, Naz Reid. Let's go to Naz Reid in tier 6. You ask and you shall receive. The answer was going to be Wendell Carter Jr. Now it's Naz Reid. Guess what? The entire slate was one way, and now it's different, Emac.
Oh, we got to love this. Even with just 6 teams in action, we have surprises here. So to quickly recap there for Ace of Spades, tier 1 is going to be Tatum. Tier 2, Karl Anthony Towns. Tier 3, Wagner. Tier 4, I like Duren. I think a lot of people are going to land that route. Your pivot would probably be Josh Hart. Tier 6 is now going to be Naz Reid, leaping over Wendell Carter Jr. So there we are. Let's see. Do you want to do your favorite DK plays at each position as we're waiting for some of this information to pop up, or you want to hit on anything in the other questions?
So,
we can circle back.
I'm going to have to rerun everything, because I mean, what we should do is hit on Rudy Gobert being ruled out, because that's fairly significant to the slate. But the biggest news that we could possibly have during the course of the show was Gobert being ruled out. One thing I want to ask you, was your preference that we knew before or after the slate started that Rudy Gobert was going to be out?
So I think I would have preferred after, and that just would leave less obvious, the usual pat answer. It would be less time for people to maneuver and pivot around. People were going to be looking for it anyway. There was going to be pretty good odds that we had it a few minutes before lock. This is way earlier than expected. Of course, the games, that's the last game of the night that's tipping off at 9. So we go at 8, 8:30 at 9. So it's not like there was going to be a huge window to wait for it anyway. Karl Anthony Towns was looking like a strong option. What this does is it gives us Naz Reid as another potential point per dollar play, and it's going to boost Kyle Anderson. And Anderson's kind of that chameleon-like player. He can get a benefit. If it was to be Mike Conley who was out, we could see a little more from slow-mo. He has evolved from kind of that shooting guard, small forward, into that power forward / cover the center slots, but he can still do a little bit of everything, whatever the team needs. So he is someone that I like. as well tonight. So it's not necessarily opening up a true center position. It just gives us a little bit more flexibility. I don't think it hurts anything, or people aren't going to be painting themselves into a corner, Greg. It would have been, he was looking really good in the utility slot on Yahoo with our original projections. I know you hate Yahoo, but that's okay. I'm playing over there tonight. But he's now that he's out of the picture, it smooths things out a little bit there. So ambivalent. It's how I've learned to not get mad. That's the key about DFS. Shit's gonna happen. Shit's gonna hit the fan. You know, technology may not work.
Sometimes your camera doesn't work. Sometimes your mic doesn't work. Sometimes the guys you want to play well don't play well. There's all kinds of things happen in DFS.
It just happens. There's going to be a new slate tomorrow. How do you react? How do you maintain on an even keel? Don't drive angry, as Bill Murray said in Groundhog's Day. You just have to understand that you're going to react. Like the splitting of the slates now and changing things. We're all playing with, that's the beauty of DFS. We're all playing with the same rules, same player pool. It's how we adapt within that makes the difference. So.
Yeah, so I feel pretty good that Naz Reid is going to start at center for the Timberwolves in place of Rudy Gobert. And we have seen, let's see, how many starts this year for Naz Reid. Naz Reid actually hasn't started in any games. Let me see. Has Gobert sat any games this year? Let's look up games that Gobert has missed this season.
So Karl-Anthony Towns has missed only one, to be helpful.
And Gobert has only missed one as well. So I'm going to pull up that game and figure out what ended up happening in that game. Okay, so we saw one game that Rudy Gobert missed. The starting lineup that we saw the Timberwolves go with in that game. And by the way, Mike Conley was also out that game. It's a game against the Celtics, and the date was January 10th. It was the tail end of a back-to-back. They sat both Gobert and Conley that game. Starting lineup ended up being Nickeil Alexander-Walker. We don't have to worry about that. It's still going to be Mike Conley starting unless something drastic changes. Anthony Edwards, we can feel confident that he's going to start. Jaden McDaniels. They started Kyle Anderson at power forward and Karl-Anthony Towns at center. I wouldn't be shocked if it does end up being that Kyle Anderson starts, considering that's what they did the last time that we were in this scenario. But with that said, Naz Reid came off the bench and still played 37 minutes. So it's not something that, even if Naz Reid comes off the bench, it's not something that means you should avoid him. What's really interesting to me, though, is now I think that there's a pretty good chance, just based on what the Timberwolves did the last time that Gobert was at, I think there's a pretty good chance Kyle Anderson starts. They slide Towns over to the center spot. So with that in mind, I think it makes sense to play a good amount of Kyle Anderson as well, who might not be somebody the field is on quite as much. The field could be going to just Naz Reid and not considering Kyle Anderson. One thing I am kind of curious about when our projections update is just see what the minutes look like and try to figure out from there who it is that we are projecting to start.
And in the other game where there was no Karl-Anthony Towns, it also was Kyle Anderson who started in that one. That was a little bit of a weirder game. We saw Reed only get about 19 minutes off the bench. That was against Sacramento. I'm guessing it was just a playing situation. That was 2 days before Christmas. I wouldn't read too much into that, other than it does look like Kyle Anderson is going to be a prominent part of this. And then by default, Reed is going to be the main backup. And we've seen him in that backup role for the last several years. So we know what he can do when he jumps on in.
Yeah. And by the way, our projections are updated now, and our updated projections, if you wouldn't mind pulling that up here, Mike, I'm also going to talk about it. Just looking over what some of our projections are. I'll start with DraftKings and I'll talk about FanDuel right afterwards. But even with us giving Kyle Anderson the bulk of the minutes here, it looks like we've got Kyle Anderson now in for 35 minutes. We still have Naz Reid for 31 minutes. It makes both of them really strong options. And to double back before, remember somebody asked who's your favorite play for under 4K? It is by a mile Kyle Anderson now. I just want to make sure that we could reiterate that from before. So Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, these are the cheap guys that see the biggest boost as far as playing time goes. And now we've got Karl-Anthony Towns up to 48 fantasy points to projection. Same goes for Anthony Edwards. So between the two of them, considering how much cheaper Towns is than Edwards, you're going to want to be playing Karl-Anthony Towns a whole bunch. So my three favorite plays for Minnesota in light of this news: Kyle Anderson, Naz Reid, and Karl-Anthony Towns.
All right. I'll give you a sec here to run. We got a couple of questions we can answer that don't involve those things. So, question here is any interest in small shares of Joe Ingles on DraftKings? That's
No.
from Courtney Whitmore. So the answer on that's going to be no. There's too many available players. Yes, there's a story that one of them or two of them is going to get to 20 minutes, but we don't know who that's going to be off the bench. It could be Mo Wagner. It could be Cole Anthony. It could be Ingles, it could be a variety of players. It could be Jonathan Isaac. They could all split and get 16 and a half minutes. It's very tenuous at this point. Like the way you're thinking and looking for other openings there, but this is just not quite the team that where Ingles can employ his true versatile skill set, because he's redundant on a team that has a bunch of players. Like almost every player on that team outside of Itaze can play multiple positions, which is actually pretty impressive. So he's going to get lost in the sauce, as they say.
Yeah, and also I wanted to talk about the FanDuel side of the Timberwolves situation as well, which the players are a little bit more expensive on Minnesota. As far as Naz Reid is $5,500, Kyle Anderson is $5,000. So I'm sure people are going to say, oh, does that make them still good plays on FanDuel? Yeah, for sure. We've got Naz Reid and Kyle Anderson both projected around 30 fantasy points at the respective price points. The two highest priority value options on FanDuel right now. And then Karl Anthony Towns, 45 fantasy points at $8,200. That also makes him a really high priority. So same thing that I talked about for DraftKings, it applies to FanDuel. Towns, as well as Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, your top three Timberwolves players to get to on FanDuel. And honestly, probably the top three players overall in the entire slate.
All right, and that kind of hits one of our super chats here. Actually, two of them kind of gets your must plays on FanDuel and your favorite plays on FanDuel. Last on DK favorite plays at each position, and Jorge Acome is also looking for top three must-haves in a 20 max. If there's any you want to add to the trio you just targeted there.
So
DK by position.
Yeah, so for Jorge, and then for Thomas Ryan's question about my favorite plays at each position, once I rerun lineups, we could circle back to that. But Jorge, for my top three must-haves in 20 max, yeah, it's going to be Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, Karl Anthony Towns, all three really, really strong options.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We're most likely going to play for the answer. I would go as many as 5 Timberwolves. Essentially, the starters and Naz Reid would be the 6 we're focusing on. If somebody has a bad game, gets hurt, gets in foul trouble, it's going to be Nickeil Alexander-Walker that slips on in. But I think at this point, assuming he does not start, that we're gonna have a heavy helping of Timberwolves.
Yeah, and we don't have that starting lineup yet for the Timberwolves, and it is possible they start Karl Anthony Towns alongside Naz Reid, but I feel best projecting the starter to be Kyle Anderson, just because in the one game that we saw Rudy Gobert sit this year, it was Kyle Anderson that started with Karl Anthony Towns sliding to center. By the way, we've got another injury update. Marcus Sasser out for the Detroit Pistons. This isn't going to necessarily significantly change the slate, but if you are somebody who's playing, mass amounts of lineups tonight, there are some players like at the end of the Pistons bench. They're going to benefit a little bit from here. I think this makes Evan Fournier a little bit of a better option to get to, because you and I were talking about Fournier this morning as being somebody with a pretty wide range of outcomes as far as his minutes expectation. And I do think that Evan Fournier maybe looks a little bit stronger as a contrarian GPP option with Marcus Sasser out. Now, not anybody who you want to load up on, but as we got Mike pulling up the ownership projections here, could you go and scroll down? What do we have Fournier's ownership projection? I believe it was 6% this morning. Yeah, so let's see. Evan Fournier is projected for, oh no, that's Al Horford. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Evan Fournier still projected for sub 6% ownership. If you want to be really contrarian in large field tournaments, I think Evan Fournier is somebody you could get to. Not a single entry option or anything like that, but definitely somebody who makes sense. Deep GPP flyer.
All right. Do you have any other questions that you want to hit there in Discord?
Let's see. We've got let's wrap up the super chats, and then we
okay.
Could,
you ready now?
Yeah, we'll wrap up the super chats, and then we'll get into the Discord questions.
All right, so it's sort of like a run through DK with the hitting a fave at each position, as well as top 3 must-haves in the 20 max for Jorge.
All right, so Let me run this really quick. And all right, so starting with which was the first question you asked me?
Tops at each position. DK.
For which site?
DK.
Okay, so top players at each position for DraftKings. At point guard, that is still going to be Jalen Suggs for me. It was somebody I liked a whole bunch this morning. Still going to be Jalen Suggs. At shooting guard, Jalen Suggs also is somebody who stands out. Actually, I'm going to switch this. I'll go Mike Conley at point guard, Jalen Suggs at shooting guard. Small forward, I'm going to go with... I'll just go Kyle Anderson at small forward. At power forward, Naz Reid, center, Karl Anthony Towns.
That is pretty close to what I am doing on Yahoo as well. So I guess we're going to be chalky. The key things to remember about that, these players are chalk for a reason. We can also look for differentiation. That does not mean making bad plays. It just means making the combinatorial matchups or build out of your player pool, have a roster, have a couple of lower owned players. That's the key, guys. It's picking one or two players to just tweak a little bit, and you don't have to get too crazy. All righty. Let me just make sure we got that kind of hits the super chats there. And thank you again, everybody, for being patient here. We do appreciate that. And let's see. All right, I think we're cleared up through that. Good luck there, So Toxic. So Toxic, So Tex. I'm so used to calling him So Toxic. That's just his attitude. One of the nicest guys in chat, but he's so toxic.
Yeah, Sotex, I've known Sotex for a minute because Sotex was one of the first people to comment on my old Basketball Monster article that I started writing, I think in 2017. So yeah, I mean, I've known Sotex for like 7 years at this point.
Very nice.
Actually, it might have been 2016. Let me check something really quick. When did I? Yeah, 20. I started 20. So it's 8 years. 8 years it's been. Let's see. The other question you asked me, what was the next super chat you asked me?
It was the Jorge's top three.
We did that one.
Oops, sorry.
It was a FanDuel question you asked me.
Get back in there. We talked about Joe Ingles. Just favorite FanDuel plays and 2 must-have players. Now that we've got the news again, we sort of touched on that, but go ahead and clean that one up since we have 25 minutes until 2.
Yep. So top 2 players, because one guy, it looks like RBL41 asked my favorite FanDuel plays. Then Meeks asked my top 2 must-have players on FanDuel. So let's see. I'm going to do this by my most rostered player at each position on FanDuel, and then I'll say who I have the most exposure to overall as well. So at point guard, Jalen Suggs. At shooting guard, also Jalen Suggs. So Jalen Brunson at point guard, Jalen Suggs at shooting guard. So 2 Jalens so far. At small forward, Kyle Anderson. No shock there. Power forward, Naz Reid. No shock there. Karl Anthony Towns at center. Also, no shock there. My 2 most rostered players on FanDuel. Guess who they are, Matt? Can you wager a guess? I think you probably get it correct.
Who is which is your favorite?
I was going to say, I bet you could guess who my 2 most rostered players on FanDuel are.
The Jalens.
It is Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's it almost feels like they. Okay, let's talk. How high will you go on those guys? 80% in your player pool.
So on FanDuel, I got to 100% of Kyle Anderson and 149 of the 150 lineups at Naz Reid.
Okay. And you're completely comfortable doing that because that'll be the next question.
Yeah, I don't have an issue. It's like here's if somebody's playing DFS and you just arbitrarily decide that you don't want to play, if you're playing 150 lineups and you just arbitrarily decide, oh, I don't want to have 100% of a guy when the sims are saying it's optimal, and if you're just saying, well, I want to play 70% instead to be risk adverse, you're better off just playing less lineups than just foregoing the best projected plays on the slate, because these guys are the 2 best by a really wide margin.
All right, another super chat here from Bruce Booth, 499, says Fournier or Gary Harris on DraftKings.
Let's see. So Fournier or Gary Harris. I am going to go with Harris because he is So if you don't have to worry about price or anything like that, and it's just a utility spot, Gary Harris. But if you're talking about just overall for the slate, I'm going to be getting to myself more of Evan Fournier. I think he's a little bit more upside. He also has better position eligibility, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Fournier's shooting guard, small forward, and he's cheaper than Gary Harris. Well, actually, I'm going to take that back. Now that we have projections updated for Sasser being out, we have Fournier up to 21.5 fantasy points. So Evan Fournier, he got a bigger bump from that than I was anticipating.
I think what you really mean is, hey, I just remembered he played for the Magic after he got traded from Denver. This is a revenge game. Clearly, I need to say Fournier.
No, it's Marcus Sasser is out. That's the reason why.
I'm not so sure, Greg. Not so sure. All right. If they bring back Magnum PI again, I think Emac should play him. I should play Higgins. Well, hopefully that's the original one and not the remake, because the remake, she was a British woman. The original, it was Jonathan Hillerman. And even though he had that English accent, he was American. I believe he was from Texas. The Bogdanoviches are not related. No, they're not even from the same country. Good to know.
No, aren't they both Serbian?
I don't believe so.
Oh, which one's not from Serbia?
Well, I think it's a split of the Balkan countries, is my guess. So ethnicity similar, countries different.
Interesting. I was not aware of that. I always thought that they were both from the same country. By the way, got a bunch of questions in Discord, so I'll start answering some of these for us here, Emac. And the first one here is coming to us from Psycho. He says, Anthony Black, a great play today. How much percentage am I getting to him? Is Anthony Black somebody standing out to you? Because I think I might have been getting to him earlier, but now at this point, I doubt I'm going to be getting myself to very much of Anthony Black. Just so much value has opened up at this point.
So on Anthony Black, he is going to be prominently featured in my showdown portfolio there on DraftKings, just because I think he was 2,400 in the captain spot, so I think he's 1,600 overall. He ended up being in all 5 of my lineups there, one as a captain. I'm comfortable with where I landed on that. I'm not going to go back and change that. I'm assuming I don't have Sasser in there, but that is the only place I found him. As Greg mentioned, with Sasser out, that some better things have opened up where we don't really need to go to Anthony Black, and he's just not popping up because he doesn't have quite that salary floor that he does on the showdown slate. So anybody that's $3,000 or less on those DraftKings showdown slates, that's like being like $2,000 on main slate. It really opens up a ton of stuff there with the salary multiplier, but those guys are usually discarded on the main slate, even if they're tremendous options on showdown slates.
Yeah, Anthony Black, would have liked him earlier. So we got a question earlier about favorite sub 4K play on FanDuel. The answer is really just like nobody. It would be Anthony Black if I had to pick somebody. So that was really what we're talking about, Anthony Black in relevance too before. And then we got IC50 asked us, do we have any Bogdanovic love, or are the minutes not there? So you were just talking about Bogdanovic, and now I've got a Bogdanovic question.
So his defense is really not there. Why they got him instead of Evan Fournier. I just that's for another day. But he is good on offense, not so good on defense. Their whole defense is just a mess at this point because Anunoby is out. So I'm ambivalent at this point to Bogdanovic. I worry that he does not get above 24, 26 minutes. I don't have his minutes projection up, but I don't know that he is going to get all the way up there. We have not seen Jalen Brunson over the last few games really dominate. That's something that if his shot's falling, those are shots that aren't going to be taken by Bogdanovic. So I'm not as big of a fan of him. I don't like the fit.
He's been terrible on the Knicks from a real life perspective. And the Knicks, especially being kind of like a defense first team, and Bogdanovic has been really poor on that end of the court. His minutes are just not the same with the Knicks. His usage is not the same with the Knicks. So not somebody who's really a strong consideration for me. Next question that we have here, it is from Stokes. He's saying it's hard getting to Jason Tatum tonight. Am I forcing any of them in with an ROI boost? So it's going to be a little bit easier to get to Tatum now than it was earlier because of the extra value that's opened up. But there's just other guys I prefer on the high end to Jason Tatum. So I would rather play relative to their salaries, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns. But I have a feeling you probably get to some Jason Tatum now. just because extra values open up. But I don't think you need to force in Jason Tatum or anything like that.
No, I would agree with that. And he's someone that I broke down in the DFS building blocks article today. He's on the cusp of greatness. He's going to be turning 26 next week. He does a little bit of everything, but Boston is so healthy right now. It's hard to get overly excited about him in a lot of situations, because it could be Jaylen Brown that has the good game, lest we forget about Drew Holiday. It's hard to like those guys unless they're sitting hard to like the Celtics unless they're sitting one of their key top 6 players.
Yeah, it was a team I wasn't getting a whole bunch of this morning. If I had to play one player from the Celtics, it would be Tatum at this point. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yes, absolutely. But I don't think he's a go out and get him player, because we'd rather have Towns. I'd rather have Brunson, truthfully, even though he theoretically has the more difficult matchup, obviously at different positions, but I think he'll have more of an opportunity for fantasy points up in that range, or even Anthony Edwards would be all guys I like. Now, that's where the field's going to land as well, at least with Towns and Edwards. So that brings in Tatum as the leverage option against those other players, right? And all it takes is for him to outscore one of them by 10, and you have the leg up. And that's where we were talking about things being very concentrated tonight. So one little tweak in some of your lineups going over to Tatum, that's the leverage where you're against the field. It's not a direct leverage play, right? Because they're not on the same team stealing each other's production. But that would be the field leverage, the Indian leg wrestling. Do people do that anymore? We used to do that in PE. Did you ever have to do that? Do they allow touching in PE?
What did you do in PE?
That Indian leg wrestling? That's what they called it?
No clue. I have no clue what that is.
All right.
Was that the thing where the gym teacher used to make you? He would take you to the locker room and he'd make you touch him? Because I've done that before in gym class. Okay. He didn't call it. He called it something else.
That's called climbing the rope,
wrestling,
Greg. That's called climbing the rope. I think that's an East Coast thing. I grew up on the West Coast, so we didn't do those sorts of that sort of physical education.
Show us on the doll where the Indian touched you.
Everywhere.
All righty. Let's see. Chat like
the next question we have is from Crash Money 92. He's asking thoughts on playing Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Wagner together. There's enough value that's opened up on the slate that I don't think that's necessary to do at all. Wendell Carter Jr., Mo Wagner. Like earlier, I was getting myself to a good amount of Mo Wagner, but once again, just so many of these cheap guys who were kind of fringy went by the wayside once Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid opened up. And then Sally South is the lineup generator, still showing Rudy Gobert. Refresh it, and you should be good now.
Yeah, refresh it. We just got stuff just came through at 741 and 744. So it should be pushing out to the lineup generator. It's in the Sims now.
And by the way, we should let people know about that as Mike is bowling up the lineup generator here. Got the new lineup generator package, EMAC.
Indeed, we do. Putting it all together. Put those hands together. You get we bundled them. All of the lineup generators under one umbrella for $79.95 per month. You get all the sports, and that will include baseball when we are about 4 weeks away from baseball at this point. But we have seen that the lineup generator and CEO Tom Kennedy, Tom JK 123 has said he thinks that is the tool that will turn the DFS world upside down, because it's at an affordable price point across all of the sports. It takes out bad lineups. It's just not going to create them for you. It utilizes and leverages all of the other tools that we have, including the Sims capability. It's very easy to use. If you want to get in a fun sweat, you've got kids, you got to get dinner ready. You just have a few minutes to sneak away to your computer or your phone, make a few lineups. The lineup generator is for you. You also get access to the Discord with that. So it's a good one to check out. I like the Eric Chop. That's 2 words. Not if you bundle them. Mahomes and Maotto. It's a good commercial. Jake from State Farm.
And the next question we had was from Gangrene, who's asking Achua or Duren on DK. That's going to be Duren for me. Neither of them are really priorities, but between the two of them, I'm going with Jalen Duren. He's a much better fantasy producer. I know that there's been some crazy ceiling games from Precious Achua lately. I think those are going to start to go away, though, because as we see more of Isaiah Hartenstein, his minutes are going to trend upward. He only played slightly over 10 minutes last game. I don't expect a massive amount of minutes for Hartenstein, but any sort of increased minutes that he does see is likely to come out of Precious Achiuwa's minutes allotment. And then on top of that, when Precious Achiuwa plays alongside Isaiah Hartenstein, he sees a decreased rebound rate. So I do prefer Jalen Duren to Precious Achiuwa, but do you feel differently on that, Emac?
No, and for all the reasons you stated, we're just seeing a healthy helping of minutes there for Achiuwa. He continues to make his shots. That's not necessarily his game. He's getting by on double doubles and volume, and that's something that could go away now that Hartenstein is back. He's still going to play a ton, but he's more out there for defense and dirty work. Gary Harris on FanDuel, still a good play. Yes, I think he is reasonable on FanDuel. I am putting in, you had mentioned for everybody here, the looking at it, or the question came up, what would you do with your ownership for some of the players? I'm seeing I'm getting 93% of Kyle Anderson and 82% of Naz Reid on my 150 lineups there on DraftKings. I am going to keep that. I was going to set a lineup cap. I was thinking I'd get more of them than that, but and set a 90% lineup cap, but I'm perfectly comfortable with where they're coming in right now. It looks like Fournier for me, dear God, is going to be my leverage play. I have 60%, where currently the field is at about 20%, Greg. So I guess that's where I land with Fournier. He is going to be my 7th most owned player tonight.
Yep. Like I said, Fournier ended up getting a really, really big bump in our projections once Sasser was ruled out. And it was something that I definitely thought it was going to make him more viable. But yeah, we ended up projecting for a lot of minutes, and that ended up getting him into a good amount of my lineups.
Yeah, and the other thing with him is, remember, our best value plays are power forward and center. It's Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid. So we're kind of lacking, and he has a small forward shooting guard that gives him more flexibility. Keys to the kingdom there on DraftKings. All right, we have 10 minutes before a lock. I'm going to export my lineups. Greg, look at this. Knocking on wood, no mad scramble here, Greg. This is the beauty of the lineup generator, and the Sims tool. I am able to maneuver this. Fortunately, I took your advice and I did not play multiple sites tonight. Well, I didn't play over there on FanDuel. I was looking towards playing that, but decided not to, just because of the potential scramble. And now I'm glad I did. Are your lineups in?
Yep, I'm all good and ready to go here. So if we look at some of the final questions that we have, we got a super chat, by the way. We had a Pierre asked, is playing Banchero over Cat good leverage on FanDuel? I don't really see how it's leverage, right? Like there's not really a correlation between Paulo Banchero and Karl Anthony Towns, but at least as far as the two of them, for me, I strongly prefer Cat over Banchero. They're two of my more rostered players on the entire slate, but yeah, I prefer Cat to Banchero.
And then just to call this out, Orlando does play again tomorrow. They're the only team that's playing tomorrow. Minnesota's the team that played yesterday. They're the only team on the back-to-back. So, Pierre, I see where you're going with that one. But the worry would be is that Orlando is able to take care of business. They've got the really good defense. Detroit's a mess. These guys, we normally, Banchero and Wagner get 34 minutes. It could be a stretch for them to get over 30. And that 10% of the minutes is something that could be made up with efficiency, because you figure those guys are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting on offense and the contributions there. But this team is so good on defense, they could shut down the Pistons enough that they're up by 20, and it didn't take going into the fourth, and it didn't take a lot from Banchero and Wagner. So that would be the downside there. But again, fortune favors the bold. I don't think it's a horrible play at all. It's just one of those, hey, when it works, going to pay off nicely for you. You're looking at about probably a 30% success rate on that.
And let's see, I think there was one other question that we got. A couple of questions that came into Discord, a few questions actually. For whatever reason, Discord has just started giving me my notifications in random orders, which is kind of annoying at times when I'm trying to answer questions. But we've got one here from Jason123, and Jason is asking us, are Milton or Flynn flyer options for GPPs? That is a no for me. You getting yourself to Shake Milton or Malachi Flynn?
No, those guys could easily be DNPs. That's the fear. Or sub 6 minutes. You're counting on a blowout rotation. to get him into double-digit minutes, most likely.
And
that mop-up duty,
other
right? So
question
blow
we
out
have in here is about Mike Conley versus Jalen Suggs. And the answer for me, so I have more exposure to Jalen Suggs, but the reason I have more exposure to Suggs is because he's cheaper. And then in addition to that, he's point guard and shooting guard, whereas Conley's only point guard. This is just, you don't have to worry about salary. You don't have to worry about position. Then the answer to me is Mike Conley, but I do have more exposure to Jalen Suggs because of the position and the price. So yeah, just a 1v1 gangrene. Give me Mike Conley in that scenario. And then Master P asked, is there a point of diminishing returns when going over or under the field on ownership? For example, on tonight's slate with Anderson being 95 to 100% owned, well, I don't think Kyle Anderson's going to be 100% owned in tournaments. He says, when intentionally going under the field, at what point should I just completely fade him? Yeah, so at least the way I build my lineups and running everything through the Sims tool, if I have somebody in 5% of my lineups, I'll just leave it at 5%. There's not a point where I'm like, oh, I'm at 5%, I might as well be 0, or I'm at 98%, I might as well be at 100. Like, for example, I played 150 lineups last night. Jordan Noir was in 149 of my top 150 lineups. I didn't all of a sudden go, oh, now I need to have 150 Jordan Noir line. I just happened to have one lineup that was one of my top projected lineups that didn't have Jordan Noir in it, but it didn't mean that I felt like I had to force him into that final lineup. Let's see. Would I play Black? I prefer Anthony Black to Shake Milton there. C. Sanders. And then let's see what else we have in Discord, because a bunch of questions are coming in right before lock. Hef Love saying, won't Grimes cut into Fournier a bit? Not really, because Sasser's out, right? So this is Grimes making his debut with the Pistons. And we just saw Fournier playing, not like crazy minutes, but he was playing solid minutes for Detroit. And now that you're taking Sasser off the court, like I think Fournier's minutes, if we go and pull up, so Fournier has played now 3 games for the Pistons. Here's what his minutes allotment has been in those games. He has played 18, 26, and 25 minutes. I think his minutes stay more or less the same now, which is fine, right? That's solid for his price point. Where you'd be concerned is if Grimes was playing and if Sasser was playing.
Correct. And the Grimes brings the skill set that Fournier does not have. Defense. Well, he's also younger too, so that helps. But Melissa says she's got 20 lineups on DK. Sims are giving her 100% Fournier. She's going to make that stand tonight. Vive la Fournier. And I've got the opposite number on Suggs and Conley, Greg. I ended up a little bit higher on Suggs than I did on Conley. So, which goes to show, even when running the Sims, we don't all get the same thing, right? I only made a couple minor tweaks, but when it runs those thousands of simulations, they're not always going to play out the same for each person. So,
yeah. And then Melissa H said she's making a stand, D-Mac, playing 100% Evan Fournier today. Don't Google him. Don't Google Evan Fournier, but Melissa's going to be on 100% of Evan Fournier here. Let's see. Was there any super chats that we missed out on?
Nope, we're good on that front.
Looks like we're all caught up on that. Did anything show up unexpected in your lineup, C-Mac?
Let's go take a look here. Other than Fournier, Mikal Bridges, I got 26% Fields at 20. That was I don't dislike it. He's the one key player on that team. Kevin Ollie, of course, took over as coach for Jacques Vaughn. But Bridges is the one person that's going to get minutes. I'm comfortable with that. I trust in the Sims. Mo Wagner coming up at 17%, but the pool's at 20. So I guess that makes sense as well. So that shouldn't be a surprise.
Let's see. We had a question.
Here, I can get those for you. So last man in, KP or Jaylen Brown? Porzingis or Brown?
Yeah, I mean, neither of them. But if it has to be one, it is so close between them. I'll go with Porzingis over Jaylen Brown. But honestly, it's ideally neither of them.
All right. Gator Boy is asking on DK, who do you like below 4,700? He already has Kyle Anderson.
Under 4,700. Well, so Nasrid is 4,900. He already has Kyle Anderson. Did he say? Yeah.
DK.
Fontecchio.
Oh, okay. Simone
So the
Fontecchio.
answer is Fontecchio for me. But with that said, what is my actual exposure to Fontecchio? I have Fontecchio in. Yeah, he's my best projected player there, but he's not actually getting his way into my lineups. But he's the answer if you absolutely need somebody.
I have 5% of Fontecchio. Field is at 8. Stephen Leibowitz has 110% of Fournier. Potentially he overboosted. You can Google the answers for that, Steve.
What happens when you Google Evan Fournier there, Emac?
I don't know. I already have enough computer problems. I try to stay away from anything untoward on this computer.
Double check to make sure we didn't miss anything. But looks like we've got all of the questions answered here, Max. We've covered everything. Made it to the end of the slate. I wouldn't say we overcame technical hurdles, but we experienced technical hurdles.
We experienced them. Landed right on that first hurdle with my nuts. That was great. And we'll have a little chat with Jordan D. Klein tomorrow. He gets his one night off. He did help me out today, and I am the biggest jinx there is. So this is all on me. But Jordan knows better than to wander off when I'm experiencing new technology.
Well, can't get worse. You'll improve from here. You will improve from here, Mac. We're also at the end of the show, so we could put the old boy to rest.
Let's put the kibosh on this because the old boy wants to get dinner. I should have eaten beforehand. The banana was not enough. So we're going to get on out of here, but we have shows tomorrow. We have the NBA strategy show. You're going to get that with Josh and Laffy, and then you're also going to get NBA live before lock. NASCAR's tomorrow as well. We do have those NASCAR sims. So that was a lot of fun with the Daytona. I believe this race is in Atlanta, and they have changed that Atlanta Speedway a little bit, so it's less of a groove track and potentially could be more like Daytona and Talladega. So we shall see. Could be a fun one there tomorrow. But you can follow Greg in the meantime on Twitter. He is at G Ehrenberg DFS. I am at EMAC DFS. Thank you to producer Mike. Check us out on Stochastic at stochastic_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.